Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. My name is Amanda Jarvis, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC network. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 27 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one consulting services are available at no charge. Today's boot camp, Future-Proofing Your Business with Blockchain, is presented by the Virginia SBDC network. Be sure to check out our next digital bootcamp, Success Through E-commerce, on April 7th. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted today, but if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. We've also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session. Cameron Nelson is the Chief Digital Advisor for Virginia SBDC and Central Virginia SBDC. Mr. Nelson has over 18 years experience in technology and as a senior tech consultant in Silicon Valley, helping Fortune 500 companies improve their digital marketing and e-commerce. At the same time, he founded several tech companies, including a software service website for tree preservation and a blockchain platform for nonprofits. Cameron is accomplished in language culture, has an MBA and MA, and believes new technology products have the ability to help shape our world for the better. Please join me in welcoming our presenter for today, Cameron Nelson.
Thanks for the introduction, and hello everybody. Welcome to Future Proofing Your Business. We'll be talking about the concepts of Web 3.0 and blockchain as it pertains to your small business. So I hope you find this informative, and we'll have some time at the end for your questions. So let's jump right into it. The presentation will be covering these 5 topics today. First, we'll be taking a look at what is blockchain technology and how does that relate to what's being described as Web 3.0. Second, we'll talk about how blockchain is useful for small businesses. Third, we'll take a look at the future path of blockchain and how its development might impact, industry and business going forward. Fourth, we'll look at the variety of industry applications where blockchain can be helpful. And lastly, we'll talk about some safety and privacy concerns as it relates to using blockchain technology and its associated technologies in your business. So first, I want to start by talking about what is blockchain. So blockchain is a term that encompasses many different apps built on blockchain. So all of these things are parts of the blockchain. You'll see here cryptocurrency, cryptography, DLT, which stands for digital ledger technology. Not on this, but also included in blockchain technology is NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, which have become quite popular in the last year. We're going to talk about these different apps built on blockchain, but really what I want you to take away is that blockchain is kind of like a new form of operating system that you can build lots of different apps on for finance or smart contracts or supply chain to help out your business in many different ways. So when you hear the word blockchain, it encompasses all of these things. Next, I also want to talk a little bit about Web 3.0. This is a term that's been used a lot within the last 3 or 4 months. And how does this relate to blockchain? So just a brief history of the internet and the web. Web 1.0 was the first iteration back in the AOL days. This enabled just basic web pages that were run on HTML. Email was available back then, and very, very basic e-commerce, but nothing as advanced as what we see today with like Shopify or Amazon. So since around 2006, things got a pretty significant upgrade with Web 2.0. This enabled all of the social media platforms that we use, like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. It allowed access for mobile devices, a high quality streaming of audio and video, using apps on a smartphone that go over the internet. This was all enabled by access to high-speed communication and high-speed data. So this is where we're at right now. And many businesses, if they're e-commerce businesses, they have a website and a platform that's built on Web 2.0 technology, right? And so where we're headed next is Web 3.0. And, a lot of industry leaders and businesses believe that this term Web 3.0 will kind of dominate the discussion in the next 10 years or so. So what is Web 3.0? It's built on DApps, which stands for distributed apps. This is an aspect of the blockchain that we'll talk about. It allows for things like NFTs, these non-fungible tokens. Facebook recently changed its corporate name to Meta in a shift to the metaverse. So that is virtual reality and augmented reality, VR and AR. Those types of technologies are enabled by Web 3.0 and things like more advanced artificial intelligence. So the main takeaway here is that when you talk about Web 3.0, keep in mind that this is built on a foundation of blockchain technology by and large. So many of the aspects of Web 3.0 that are being developed and rolled out are built on blockchain. Another thing that I want to go over so everybody's clear is what is the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain, because I get asked this a lot and there's quite a bit of confusion, but they're quite separate things. So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, which is essentially an application built on the blockchain technology. So you might remember I said blockchain is like an operating system. You can think of it like Windows or Mac OS. It's a different operating system. Now, Bitcoin is an app built on blockchain. And the purpose of Bitcoin, its aim is to simplify and increase the speed of financial transactions, right? Without government restriction, without banks being involved. So that's Bitcoin's goal, whereas blockchain's goal is to provide a safe and low-cost operating system environment for any kind of application to be built on, especially those that are dealing with like peer-to-peer transactions or between you and somebody else that doesn't have to go through a bank or a government to make that transaction happen. And I'll explain why blockchain enables these peer-to-peer transactions, whereas they weren't available before. Bitcoin is limited to trading just as a currency, but blockchain is this operating system that can be built to transfer anything from stocks or property rights or currency. Any kind of a digital thing can be built and traded on a blockchain. So the scope of Bitcoin we see is quite limited just to finance, whereas the scope of blockchain is open to taking change, and it's been gaining the backing of many top companies and even governments, as we'll talk about more in a moment. So just remember, these are the main differences between Bitcoin and blockchain. Bitcoin is just one app built on the blockchain. So let's learn more about what is unique about the blockchain. Well, first, let's start with a little bit of history. A blockchain was proposed as a research project in 1991, and then became famous with the advent of Bitcoin. Blockchain is just essentially a system of recording information in a way that makes it difficult or impossible to change or cheat the system. And blockchain applications like Bitcoin don't ever exist in a physical form, but they're just purely a digital type of technology that runs on the internet, and it functions in what we call an immutable blockchain. Immutable meaning you cannot change it. What is recorded in a blockchain from the beginning of time is always public and is never changeable. So there's a clear record going back to the very first transfer of Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain of who transferred it to whom and when. So the transfer history is permanent and public. So let's talk more about the features of blockchain so it becomes a little bit more clear of how this technology is being used. First off, blockchain data cannot be corrupted. Every node on the blockchain network, and a node here just refers to a computer or a server somewhere. So technically your home laptop or desktop can be a node on the blockchain. You can literally be part of the Bitcoin network if you want to. Every node has a copy of the digital ledger of the transactions, and every node is used to check the validity of new transactions being entered. So because all the nodes work in tandem using the algorithm that Bitcoin is written to run on. The data cannot be corrupted. Blockchain is a decentralized network, and it doesn't have any one governing body. So unlike a bank that has a single point of failure, if, let's just say you use Wells Fargo as an example, if Wells Fargo is hacked someday, then the records or bank information and money in the accounts of its holders potentially could be stolen. Blockchain has no central network like that can be hacked. So the risk of a one point of failure is eliminated. And decisions on the blockchain network are made by the majority of the nodes. So I've hinted at some of the improved security features of blockchain. Because there's this no central authority, no one can simply change the data or cheat the system. Blockchain runs on what's called distributed ledgers, also known as distributed ledger technology, or DLT. And what this means is that the ledger, or the record of transactions on a blockchain network, is maintained by all the nodes. And there's, if you talk about the Bitcoin network, there are hundreds of thousands of nodes all around the world. So it's very distributed. They all have an identical copy of the ledger, and they all work in tandem to validate new transactions or transfer a Bitcoin from one person to another. Blockchain runs on a consensus mechanism. So this is also called an algorithm. At its root, blockchain uses cryptography as a mathematical algorithm to verify data being entered. So unless you're a cryptography expert, a PhD in that, that's pretty much where most people's understanding of the technology stops, and that's fine. But just know that this algorithm is written, and this enables the network to record data in a secure way. And any changes to the blockchain need to be approved by the majority, or 51% of the nodes in the network. And lastly, the feature of blockchain is that it offers faster and cheaper transfers of value than the traditional banking system. And it can also go anywhere in the world. So we see this if you want to transfer a Bitcoin to somebody in another country, you can do that. And it takes just a few seconds, typically up to about a minute. It does not go through any banks or any traditional financial networks. So these are some of the features of blockchain. Now we're going to dive into some more of the use cases of how blockchain is being used by businesses today. So to illustrate how a blockchain transaction works, here's just a diagram of a very common use case. Here we have somebody who wants to send some Bitcoin to somebody else. So they're going to enter a new transaction and specify an amount. So they're going to say, I want to send 1 Bitcoin to this individual, and here is their hash, or their kind of unique key to send it to. So once that's entered, the transaction is transmitted to the network of nodes, or these peer-to-peer computers scattered across the world. This network of computers solves this algorithm, this cryptography equation, to confirm the validity of the transactions. And once confirmed, that these transactions are clustered together into a block. So you might have, 500 or 1,000 individual transactions kind of grouped together before they're en masse uploaded to the blockchain. And these blocks are then chained together to create this history that resides on the distributed ledger of all transactions going back in time that are permanent and can never be changed, and the transaction is complete. And this whole process, like I said, just takes a few seconds. So this all happens very rapidly. And to show you an example of how dynamic the blockchain is, it's always being updated. Here is a real-time view of the Bitcoin blockchain ledger as it's being updated. So some of the things you can see here that are updating as we look are the hash. This hash, which I'll try to highlight, here we go. This hash, well, any of these hashes represent a individual person. It's anonymous, but it's always public. So if you have a Bitcoin wallet, you're going to have a hash that looks something like this, and they're all unique and random. You also can see the amount of Bitcoin in this column that is being transferred and its equivalent in US dollars. So you can see that some Bitcoin transactions, $4,000, but there's one that is $21 million. So this is live and happening right now. And all of these records are being entered permanently into the ledger, the immutable ledger, and they're never going to be changed. So this record is kind of carved into stone. And this is the unique aspect of the blockchain, which makes it a technology that's quite innovative. So next, we're going to talk about how this technology is reshaping businesses. There's four main ways. The first way is that businesses can integrate accepting a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin as a form of payment. Now, this is kind of low-hanging fruit here for many businesses, and I'll show you some quick and easy ways that you can enable your business to accept cryptocurrencies. The second way is that businesses have been leveraging smart contracts, which are a unique feature of the blockchain. Essentially, you can write a self-verifying and self-enforcing business contract. This will be stored in a blockchain ledger, and it can never be changed or manipulated. So, if you have a third-party intermediary that is kind of validating you received your supplies before you pay a vendor, you can get rid of the need of a third-party validator with a smart contract. Some examples of businesses using these right now are commercial leases, vendor agreements, and even employee contracts. The third way is that businesses can use blockchain for raising capital as an alternative method to, if you don't want to go through a traditional bank and lending or private equity or a crowdfunding site like Kickstarter. Blockchain-based capital offerings, or BBOs, are a very popular way that startups and small businesses for the last 3 or 4 years have been raising large amount of money from the community to help fund their service or products. And lastly, we're going to talk about how accepting cryptocurrencies can be a big source of new customers for small businesses. Studies have shown that many people who have cryptocurrencies want to spend it, but there's a lack of businesses that accept it. And so by enabling cryptocurrency payments, either on your website or in your store, you can get an influx of new customers who are looking to spend their cryptocurrency, like a Bitcoin, and give them an outlet to do so. So first, let's talk about integrating a cheaper form of payment. So you, as a small business, you're currently probably accepting traditional payments and paying a pretty steep fee. Square and PayPal are two of the most popular payment gateways, payment providers, and they charge between 2.6 and 2.9% and 10 cents to 30 cents per transaction. So as you know, as a small business owner, you're paying a significant amount of revenue to credit card fees. So the cost of accepting a payment over the blockchain, let's say for Bitcoin, for example, is much less. There's a few solutions that help you integrate that very quickly. BitPay is a very popular one. It offers hosted checkout and a payment button that you can put on your website, which will allow someone just to click a button that says, pay with cryptocurrency. BitPay will handle all of the details, and they'll help you, and they'll make that payment go through for you, and they'll charge you just about a 1% transaction fee. Another alternative is Coinbase, which offers many of the same benefits, like a payment button that can be simply added to your website. And they also offer integrations with things like Shopify and WooCommerce. And Coinbase currently charges a 0% transaction fee. So you can see over the course of, say, a year, you could have significant cost savings by just accepting cryptocurrency payments. And within about 3 months ago, Visa partnered with this company Coinbase to offer the ability to accept cryptocurrencies to merchants and small businesses. The link to that news article is here in this slide, and this slide will be emailed to you all after the presentation. So you're welcome to click on that and read more about this partnership and how you could benefit from it. The next aspect of the blockchain is smart contracts. And smart contracts are these self-fulfilling contracts. So you would stipulate an event happens and it triggers another event to happen. Usually you could think of this as you're receiving something that you've ordered, and if you scan it and it's arrived in your warehouse, then the payment can be immediately sent to the vendor, kind of alleviating some manual steps in this process. You will write the smart contract and design it however it's going to make the most sense for your business. And you will define those rules that have to be met. Smart contracts work mostly with the digital assets, but they can also work with physical goods. Dole Pineapple has been, for the last year or two, using smart contracts to manage its transportation of like pineapples and fruits that they grow from the fields to the stores. So smart contracts can be used for physical goods as well. And by default, smart contracts aren't legal contracts, but they can become legal contracts if you meet your state and local legal standards and codes. So you'd want to work with a legal expert if you wanted your smart contract to be a legally binding contract. Some of the benefits of using a smart contract in your business is that it'll be able to reduce the cost of negotiation and enforcement and evaluation of contracts. It'll offer you a higher level of transparency and security, because like anything that's running on the blockchain, smart contracts will be essentially anonymous, but also public. So you'll be able to have instant insight into the status of your smart contracts being fulfilled. And if you want to share that information with other parties, then they'll have the instant access as well. And again, you can minimize the need of third-party involvement or enforcement of contracts. Next is blockchain-based capital offerings, or raising money through the blockchain. There's three main types. The first type is initial coin offering. You can think of a coin as a digital currency like Bitcoin. There's thousands of different cryptocurrencies. So raising money through an ICO is the oldest type of offering. And unlike any kind of traditional fundraising, which would involve, sale of equity in your company for money, if you do an ICO, then you usually sell a digital asset like a utility token, which is not giving away any equity in your company, but it's useful in your ecosystem or with your unique product. So people would buy your token in the hope that it would either go up in value, as many have done in the last 3 or 4 years, or because they want to actually use it and interact with your product or service by using your utility token that they've purchased. The next type of offering is a security token offering. And so these are different than an ICO because these offer security or equity rather than this digital token in exchange for capital or money to grow and expand a business. And the third type is an initial exchange offering. This has become the most popular recently, and the main reason is because you will partner with an established cryptocurrency exchange. So if you're not familiar with that term, Coinbase is the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the United States, but that's not the only one. There's also Kraken, there's Gemini, and around the world, there's dozens and dozens of exchanges. So you would partner with an exchange and they would work with you to list your utility token or security and help you sell that. And the reason why this has become popular is because the SEC in the United States, the Security and Exchange Commission, came down pretty hard on people doing ICOs and STOs years ago, kind of alleging that they weren't following the rules for raising equity. So if you partner with somebody like Coinbase to help you do that, Coinbase has been vetted by the SEC and is kind of green lighted to do these things now. So you're in less risk of getting in any kind of in trouble with the government. So these are different types of blockchain-based capital offerings. Are they going to be right for your business or startup? You have to decide, there's pros and cons with this versus using Kickstarter or taking out a loan from a bank. But it's a way that many businesses have raised billions of dollars successfully. So it's something to consider. And the fourth way blockchain is being used in small businesses is to provide an outlet for people to spend their cryptocurrency. So a survey done about 2 years ago showed that around 60% said that they had spent between $100 and $10,000 of a cryptocurrency to buy goods or services. And so over 75% of people in a survey had a willingness to spend their digital assets to buy things. And only 14% said that they preferred holding it for an investment. And the question was asked, what would encourage digital currency users to spend their money more frequently? And it's just due to the fact that there's not enough businesses that accept cryptocurrency. So if you go down the route and you want to accept a cryptocurrency for payment, you're going to tap into this market that is looking to spend between $100 and $10,000 on goods and services with a cryptocurrency. This is kind of the ideal price range. So this is a big reason I think that small businesses or startups starting now would want to consider jumping on the cryptocurrency bandwagon and accepting that as a form of payment to give you access to this broad market. So I want to talk a little bit about NFTs or non-fungible tokens. This is another app built on the blockchain. So similar to smart contracts or similar to Bitcoin, this is another app. And with these tokens, they're a digital token that can't be replicated. And they're issued on a blockchain like Ethereum. So these tokens can represent anything that is digital, like art or an animated sticker or an animated GIF, music, videos, tweets, and more. So if you're in the business of making and selling digital type things, NFTs, maybe you've heard of them already, maybe this is the first time, but it's actually become quite easy to create an NFT of your digital asset and sell that online. And one of the easiest ways is through Shopify. Shopify is a very large e-commerce platform that many traditional businesses use to sell their products. But just within the last 3 months or so, Shopify has created a portal to allow people to create NFTs of their digital work and sell that. So if you have these type of digital things and you're interested in jumping on the NFT bandwagon and selling them through as an NFT, then I would suggest you check out the shopify.com/NFT website, because they have a really nice interface and really streamlined. So you don't need to be tech savvy at all to start doing that. So, let's look at what's coming up next for blockchain. Blockchain has had some distinct phases. First, in the early 90s, it got started as a technology, but it had many legal and technology challenges that had to be overcome to enable it to really scale up. And we saw that happen around 2017 when major businesses like IBM, Visa, and Delta announced that they had started using blockchain for things like finance, operations, and logistics. And even individual people now started buying Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies to use as payment, but also to hold as investments. Small businesses really started adopting cryptocurrency in 2018, and they started raising money using things like the initial coin offerings. And I think that at this time, future-looking businesses started to build their services to interact with the blockchain in a way that made sense for their unique business. It could be accepting Bitcoin as payment, or smart contracts, or any other of those apps that I mentioned. So what does the future look like? I think that we're going to see really widespread acceptance, also in the government realm. Already, China has been pilot testing a digital currency called the digital yuan, which is their national currency. And the US, President Biden just 2 weeks ago signed an executive order mandating that federal agencies look at how they can incorporate blockchain technology in their agency. So this is a pretty positive steps that governments are looking at blockchain technology seriously. It's probably going to keep growing, and it's going to keep replacing traditional institutions like banks and finance. And also large and small businesses can benefit from learning about blockchain and adopting aspects of it now. And I think that in the next 3 to 10 years, those businesses that have just ignored this trend and have failed to adopt blockchain will really lose out on sales to blockchain-powered businesses. So this is the risk, but also the opportunity, if you're a business owner, that you have right now, that you're learning about this relatively early and that you have the ability now to adapt and incorporate this into your business model. So no matter what your industry is, blockchain is being used probably in your industry somewhere. Everything from banking and finance, which is a huge use case, to global currencies, business operations, communication, records of things like property, supply chains, and even voting systems. The entire country of Estonia, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, moved their voting systems both nationally and at a state level to the blockchain and developed software to run it on the blockchain. So we're seeing lots of different things shift to the blockchain, and I think this trend is just accelerating more every year. So something that's important to touch on is safety and privacy with blockchain. The question I get asked frequently is blockchain secure? The short answer is it's about as secure as any technology that we've ever used. If you think of email or web servers or the internet as in general, there's vulnerabilities in anything that we use, any traditional bank system. A blockchain does have a few unique vulnerabilities that I want to touch on so you're aware of them. One of them is called a 51% attack. And as I mentioned before, transactions are recorded in the blockchain ledger based on consensus of the majority, or about 51% of the nodes in the network. So if somebody had access to control 51% of those nodes, they could basically fabricate any transactions they wanted to. They could give themselves unlimited Bitcoin, for example. So that is a theoretical risk. It's never happened. But it's something to be aware of, as people talk about this 51% attack. It's good to know what that means. The second vulnerability is one that's not unique to blockchain, but it's called social engineering. And in this way, somebody would imitate your, somebody you trust in an email or in a message or on a social media account, and they would somehow get your password, or in blockchain terminology, your private key, which is like your password to your blockchain or cryptocurrency. And if they have that, then they could transfer your assets to themselves. So, that's a risk that's common in most financial transactions online. The third one are third-party vendors. So, when we looked at BitPay and Coinbase, these are third-party companies that want to help you as a business use blockchain in some way. Now, are they secure? Are they going to be hacked? If you use one of their services, if you store any private information there, if you store your Bitcoin on a third-party server, it's at risk, because if they get hacked, now your stuff is vulnerable. So just something to keep in mind. Your assets are only as safe as who has access to them, and if you are using third-party vendors, they need to be secure as well. And that goes along with number 4, which is poorly tested code. Blockchain and cryptocurrency is a rapidly evolving technology. Every 3 or 6 months, there's some pretty significant changes in how it's being used, or vulnerabilities or services that are being offered to help people use it. As companies rush to create these services, they're, certainly, I would say, speeding up the development process, which results in things like poorly tested code. This could leave them open to vulnerability from being hacked, and that goes back to point number 3. So how would you mitigate this risk if you were to use cryptocurrencies or use blockchain? You can use services that have been around longer. So Coinbase has been around for around 3 years. Let's just say there's another cryptocurrency exchange in the US that has been around 6 months. If you stick with those that have been around longer, that have the longest track record of being secure, that's your safest bet. Obviously, reading reviews and reading news articles about any hacks that have been discovered or reported by companies. It's just important to know, are they being secure, and are they testing their code for security vulnerabilities appropriately? You can never be 100% safe in an online environment, but by looking at these risks and understanding them, and taking measures to mitigate them, you can do the best that you can in securing your business using the blockchain and accepting cryptocurrencies. So that concludes the presentation. I'd love to take your questions now. We can, you can put them into the chat box, and I will certainly do my best to answer them all. And if you've got to jump off, thank you for attending, and I hope this was useful to you all. Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A yet. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type those in the Q&A box. I'm going to launch a poll here, an evaluation to evaluate the webinar. If you have a few minutes, if you could just take and fill out these questions, just let us know how we did today. We have a comment from Kim, very good presentation. Are there certificates or certification that we can pursue to master this topic?
There's many different certificates. It depends what element of this topic you want to master. There's lots of different facets to that. You could be looking to develop a cryptocurrency or a smart contract on the blockchain and actually code that. So there are courses on coding on the blockchain and creating these types of things by writing the code and deploying them. But obviously that requires at least a minimal background in coding already, I think, before you jump into it. If on the other hand, you're looking to understand more about something like smart contracts or accepting Bitcoin as a form of payment for your business, there are courses and tutorials on that. So it depends really what you want to achieve, but there are a lot of courses, and certainly there are some certificates that are offered as well if that's your goal to get certificates.
Great. Could you elaborate on how property records can use blockchain while still being legally binding?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's been some pretty interesting articles about home sales and rentals and stuff being tracked on the blockchain. Essentially, when if you look at the ownership history of a property like a house, the title deed is transferred from one person to another. There's a registrar, there's, this office of the state or local government that has all these papers, and they have this staff to do all this. By recording these transactions on the blockchain, you're able to essentially just bypass that third party registrar and the whole title deed process altogether. You transfer ownership directly from, the person who built it or owns it currently to the next person and on to the next person. It's recorded in the blockchain. It has happened in certain states. I think there's been examples in Texas, Florida, and California that I know of, that I've read about in the news in the last few years of real estate transactions being recorded in the blockchain. And again, not going through a traditional title process. So you can imagine the money savings involved there if you do that at scale. Yeah, and you asked, how is it legal? I mean, I'm not a legal expert, so I don't know all the nuances of that, but from my understanding, it has been happening legally across the United States.
Great. Is there a good source online to learn more about blockchain that you could recommend?
Yes, well, there's several sources. I think it depends what aspect you want to learn more about. I would probably start on YouTube. There's many great free YouTube, explainer videos or tutorials about either blockchain as a whole, which is pretty much what I covered here. So you could learn about smart contracts, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, all these different apps built on the blockchain. I think YouTube is a really smart place to start that search. And you'll find that there might be a small business or a consulting firm that has a series of videos that you're interested in. So probably just watching a series will really give you a lot more knowledge and insight into different aspects of the blockchain. But because there's so many aspects of the blockchain, I can't really give a specific YouTube channel that I'd recommend. It just depends on what you want to learn about.
How can a small business get started using blockchain on contracts? Is there a vendor providing the service?
So yes, there is. I do have a slide here for blockchain as a service platforms. So what these companies will do is help you, write a smart contract for your business. So they'll walk you through everything from, how do you identify the certain parameters that need to be met in your contract from a business point of view, but they also have developers who will write that smart contract and help you understand how to use it in your business. So all of these are, last time I researched them, companies that are still offering this service. If you do search Google for blockchain as a service, vendor or firm, you'll probably find other firms, but they're kind of like consulting firms that'll come in and work with your business and help you write that smart contract.
Could you talk about what it's like or what the process is to stand up a blockchain platform?
Well, to stand up a blockchain platform, in my mind, means like to create a new blockchain platform. Is that what you mean?
We'll see.
If you can let us know, that'd be great.
Yeah, could you, maybe elaborate a little bit on what you mean on that one. In the meantime, could you talk more about fundraising through the blockchain? If I'm trying to acquire general funding to start up my business, what platform could I use?
That's great. That's a great question. So the way that traditionally the blockchain-based capital raises have worked, if you talk about the ICO, the initial coin offering, which was really the first type, what you would do is you would either develop or hire a developer to create your token on the blockchain. This is usually created on the Ethereum blockchain. There's tens of thousands of tokens built there. You would create your own token. You would then promote that on, your social media platforms or wherever you think your target market would be, people who would be interested in investing. It's essentially like crowdfunding, like Kickstarter, right? So the more people you get your message in front of, the more likely they're going to want to buy into your ICO, your initial coin offering. There's a lot more nuance that goes into it, but essentially that's like an overview of the process. Just like having a successful Kickstarter campaign, to have an initial successful ICO, you would just have to interest enough people that at a certain time when you open the ability to start buying your token, that they're going to rush to buy it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, just like a Kickstarter campaign. So it kind of depends on your ability to promote it and how good your idea is, and if people want to invest in it.
Great. I have a few kind of here, and I think they're sort of from the same person kind of grouped together, so I'm kind of going to go over them, but kind of talking again more about some certifications. So can you share some organizations that have the certifications we talked about earlier, I think with no coding experience, and then sort of what do you see as the most profitable area for someone looking for a career change or new opportunity, or emerging promising jobs and careers in this industry, I guess, in blockchain. That's kind of all together, but maybe if you could talk about those.
To the first one, I haven't kept up on blockchain certifications within the last year or so. So I don't know currently like what the most popular is out there. So I wouldn't be able to give you a definitive name of one to go with. I know that there's many different organizations claiming to offer blockchain certifications. How useful they are in the information they teach and how useful they are in the job market, I just can't speak to. So I would just say, Google it, do your research, see which one seems to be the most legitimate. And if the goal is you want to get a job in the blockchain industry, I've worked with small businesses and startups building blockchain apps and cryptocurrencies. And in my experience of working with developers on those projects, just having some actual projects you've done in the blockchain space that you can point to and say, I developed this cryptocurrency, or I built the web interface for this blockchain application, is much more useful than pointing to a few certificates you got, because those have just, I would say, dubious value in the marketplace, because I think they're quite easy to get and you essentially, buy them. So yeah, I would say spending your time to work on a few blockchain projects, and maybe you get connected with someone who wants to develop something in blockchain and you work on that with them. So you co-found this project or this startup. I think that's much better experience than a certificate.
That makes sense. Kind of following on the question that we had earlier on the process of standing up a blockchain platform. They're asking about the process for standing up a platform because your bio says you founded tech companies, including blockchain platform for nonprofits. I guess sort of what was the process? I think, what was it like for you, I guess?
Yeah, I could talk more
How
about the
did you make that
details.
happen?
Yeah, like I mentioned, Ethereum is the blockchain that is most common to create your own token on or your own cryptocurrency on. There's what's called an ERC20 token, which is the most common type of token. So when I created my blockchain platform for nonprofits, I created an ERC20 token for the nonprofit sector. That's the easy part. The hard part is actually developing a user interface around interacting with the blockchain to make this a useful product for your target market. So for that, I found a co-founder developer who is actually in India, and we worked together to build out the user interface and the user experience on a website. So, it's one thing to create a cryptocurrency. It's the next step to actually develop a useful interface to help people interact with that. And then the final step is to be able to sell it. You need to have a market. You need to have people willing to pay for your service that you created.
Great, thank you. If one was going to create and sell NFTs, how do you value them?
That's a great question. I think that you just will look at the kind of current market rate for whatever you're trying to sell. So you look at recent history of NFT sales and transactions. You can easily do this by going to OpenSea.com. OpenSea is, I think, the world's largest NFT marketplace right now. And they list, thousands and thousands of art and other digital things that you can buy with cryptocurrency. You buy them as an NFT, so you own the only copy of them online. So yeah, I would go and, if you're selling, I don't know, let's just say digital landscape paintings of mountains, go and see what other mountain paintings are selling for on OpenSea. If they're going for $100 to $500 each, then you'd have an idea of what to price yours at. Maybe yours are better and you want to sell them for more. So you have to, I think, kind of judge that for yourself, but you should do the research. So check out OpenSea. Also, if you Google NFT marketplace, you'll find competitors to OpenSea, because there's many websites that help people sell their digital art and to buy it. So look across a range of websites to see kind of in general what the prices are for what you're trying to sell.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on the property registration on blockchain? I think which county did you do? If you could provide some of the examples, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have any specific examples. It's mostly things that I'd read in the news over the last couple of years about property transfers happening on the blockchain. I think if you Google that, if you Google, house sales on blockchain house sales or property sales, you're going to find even more recent examples of the ones I know about and specific locations, but I don't have that information handy.
Great, thanks. I have a few more. I think these are kind of, these questions are maybe a little speculative, so we can, why are people buying NFTs? Is it for investing, social standing, or both? Kind of what do you see as the next frontier for blockchain, and what should we be studying or looking at 3 to 5 years from now? I have a couple, another one kind of like that.
All right, well, we should probably start with the first one first. I think that, buying an NFT shows that, so if an artist makes some digital painting that's really beautiful and you like it, you can buy the NFT for that, and you can show that you bought it from the original artist and you're the owner. So if you wanted to sell that, you have the proof that you are the original owner of this thing. So part of it is for later resale value, right? Also part of it is because you just really love this thing. There's examples of tweets of like Elon Musk's tweets or other people's tweets being actually digitalized and sold as an NFT. So, if you really love somebody's tweet, some people have bought these for thousands of dollars. Why do they buy these for thousands of dollars? I don't really know. But I think part of it is you like what's being said, or perhaps you want to resell it later for more money, I think. And what was the second question?
Yeah, sorry. What do you see as the next frontier for the blockchain? What should we be studying or looking out for 3 to 5 years from now?
That's a great question. I think that what's happening in the next year or two is that governments are definitely awake to the technology now, and they are focused on it at a national level. So China, the US, European Union. I mean, you could just look at the country of El Salvador and how the entire country has adopted Bitcoin as a legal form of payment in the last year. So this is pretty huge. Governments and countries are getting on board with this technology. So that's where it's headed, you know. And another thing that's going to shift the traditional systems a lot is with finance, where banks that are using or able to integrate cryptocurrencies, like I mentioned, Visa is working with its vendors to help them accept cryptocurrencies. That business is, you know, on the forefront of this technology. Other businesses that ignore it are probably going to suffer a lot in the next 5 to 10 years, just because this technology has the ability to drastically reduce costs and speed up transactions. So yeah, I think both from the government point of view and from the corporate point of view, these are some of the shifts and the trends that we'll be seeing.
Great, thanks. I have one more. Do you foresee the NFT market to be at peak now, or is it a low point because it's a new form of exchange?
It's really hard to say. I don't buy NFTs myself. I don't really follow the trends that closely of, is it at a peak or not? I don't think anybody knows, to be honest. It's just like nobody knows if Bitcoin's at a peak. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So I would say just be cautious if you're getting into that, because I don't think there's anybody who can predict what the next year or two is going to look like if you're buying NFTs to invest, for example. So just do your research and go in, you know, cautiously. But I don't really have a better answer than that.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on DAOs?
So DAOs is a term that refers to a digitally organized company run on the blockchain. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in that, I guess. My knowledge is quite limited. So my perspective is it's an interesting take on kind of corporate governance in the blockchain, which is not something that I really specialize in. It's kind of a quasi-legal structure to formulate a company where voting can happen in the blockchain. It's a cool idea. It's similar to, I think, when countries adopt blockchain voting, because people are casting a vote on the blockchain, and it's easy to show that one person only cast one vote. So the technology enables that. So similarly, the technology enables governance of organizations through the concept of a DAO. So yeah, that's kind of all that I could say about that topic.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions I have right now. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. You will all receive an email with a link to the recording and to the slides. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. Be sure to check out our next digital boot camp, which is going to be Success Through E-commerce on April 7th. You can also access our website, the COVID Business Recovery Center, which we developed to help owners not only continue business operations, but to thrive and recover. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. Thank you so much for the presentation today, Cameron. Thank you everybody for attending, and we hope to see you at our next session.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Great.
Bye-bye.